The wind howled across the Arctic tundra, whipping snow into deadly curtains that could blind a man in seconds. Dr. Marcus Reed adjusted his goggles, checking the anomalous energy readings on his handheld detector for the third time. The spike in electromagnetic activity had pulled him away from his cozy research station, despite the approaching storm. "This can't be right," he muttered, his words lost to the wind. The reading suggested something massive had breached the atmosphere, yet satellite communications remained oddly silent about any meteor impacts. As he crested another ice ridge, his boots crunching through the fresh powder, Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. Before him lay a gleaming object, its metallic surface somehow untouched by frost despite the sub-zero temperatures. The vessel, and there was no mistaking it for anything else, stretched nearly 50 meters in length, its organic curves unlike any human aircraft. A deep gash ran along its side, exposing glimpses of crystalline technology that pulsed with an inner light. Marcus approached cautiously, his heart thundering in his chest. 15 years of atmospheric research hadn't prepared him for this moment. The detector in his hand shrieked as he drew closer, its readings going haywire. He switched it off, relying instead on his own senses as he circled the craft. A section of the hull had split open, creating what looked like an entrance. Steam rose from the opening, suggesting the interior maintained some form of life support. Marcus knew he should radio for backup, alert his supervisors, do anything except what he was about to do. But something pulled him forward, curiosity, destiny, or perhaps simple human stubbornness. Inside, the air felt surprisingly warm. Bioluminescent panels cast everything in a soft, aquamarine glow. The architecture seemed to flow like frozen waves, with no sharp angles or straight lines. His boots clicked against the floor, the sound echoing through curved corridors that branched in several directions. A faint pulse of purple light caught his attention. Following it, Marcus found himself in what appeared to be the ship's control center. Banks of crystal displays lined the walls, most dark or cracked. But at the center of the room, suspended in a column of light, floated a humanoid figure. Marcus approached slowly, his breath catching in his throat. The being before him appeared female, her form both alien and eerily human. Her skin held a subtle iridescence, like mother of pearl, with delicate patterns that shifted beneath the surface. Instead of hair, elegant tendrils that resembled fiber optic cables cascaded from her head, each one pulsing weakly with light. Her features were sharp but beautiful, with large, almond-shaped eyes closed in what appeared to be sleep, or death. The containment field surrounding her flickered, and Marcus noticed the spreading darkness in its light. The ship's power was failing. Without thinking, he reached for the field's control panel, his fingers hovering over the alien symbols. The woman's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that swirled with galaxies of color. Their gazes locked, and Marcus felt a presence brush against his mind, featherlight but unmistakable. "Help me." The words formed in his consciousness without sound, accompanied by a wave of desperate need. The containment field flickered again, more violently this time. Marcus saw the wounds then, a deep gash across her abdomen, sealed by some sort of biological stasis. If the field failed completely, she would die. He had seconds to make a decision that would change his life, and possibly all of human history. The rational part of his mind screamed about protocols, quarantine procedures, and the potential risks. But as he looked into those impossible eyes, he saw something that transcended species, a living being in need of help. Marcus reached for the controls again, this time with purpose. His fingers found patterns in the alien script, guided by an intuition he couldn't explain. The containment field dissolved gradually, and he caught the alien woman as she fell forward. She felt impossibly light in his arms, her skin cool but not cold, with a texture like silk over steel. Her consciousness brushed his again, stronger this time, filled with gratitude and something else, curiosity that matched his own. The ship groaned around them, more systems failing by the second. Marcus knew he had to get her to safety before the structure collapsed or the storm trapped them both. "I've got you," he said aloud, though he knew she couldn't understand the words. But as he carefully lifted her, her tendrils curled slightly, their light strengthening. One brushed against his cheek, sending a tingle of electricity through his skin and a flash of emotion that wasn't his, trust, mixed with fascination. The storm had intensified outside, but Marcus's research station lay less than a kilometer away. He wrapped the alien woman in his outer weather gear, protecting her from the worst of the cold. Her eyes remained fixed on his face as he carried her through the blizzard, their swirling colors now the only light visible in the whiteout conditions. Behind them, the ship's lights dimmed and died, leaving only the howling wind and the warm weight in his arms. Marcus Reed, who had come to the Arctic seeking atmospheric anomalies, now carried the greatest discovery in human history through the storm. But looking down at the extraordinary being who watched him with such trust, he realized she was more than a discovery. She was a person, perhaps the loneliest person in the universe. The research station's lights appeared through the snow like a beacon of hope. As Marcus punched in his access code with numbed fingers, he knew his life's work had just changed forever. What he didn't know was that his heart was about to change as well, in ways no human had ever experienced before. The soft hum of medical equipment filled Marcus's makeshift infirmary. He'd converted his primary research lab into a recovery room, using every piece of monitoring equipment he could adapt to track his extraordinary patient's vital signs. The alien woman lay on a modified examination bed, her iridescent skin casting subtle patterns on the ceiling above. 3 days had passed since he'd brought her from the crashed ship. The wound across her abdomen had begun healing itself, sealed by what appeared to be a biological polymer unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her bioluminescent tendrils pulsed stronger now, creating a hypnotic dance of light that seemed to follow some unknown rhythm. Marcus checked her readings again, though he could only guess at what constituted normal values for her species. He'd maintained radio silence with his supervisors, claiming equipment malfunctions due to the storm. It bought him time, but he knew it couldn't last forever. "Your cellular regeneration rate is remarkable," he said aloud, having fallen into the habit of talking to her even though she remained unconscious. "The wound is healing at least 10 times faster than human tissue would." Her eyes opened. Marcus froze as those galaxy-filled irises focused on him. The presence he'd felt in his mind at the crash site returned, stronger now, like a gentle tide washing against his consciousness. Understanding. The concept formed in his mind, accompanied by a sensation of curiosity. She was learning his language, he realized, directly from his thoughts. "Can you understand me?" he asked, both aloud and in his mind. "Yes." The response came with a ripple of satisfaction. The alien woman attempted to sit up, and Marcus quickly moved to assist her. Her tendrils brushed against his arms as he helped her, sending tiny electrical impulses through his skin. "Careful," he cautioned. "You're still healing." "I am, recovering." Her mental voice grew stronger, more distinct. The words came with subtle variations in the light patterns beneath her skin. "Your assistance, grateful." "You're welcome," Marcus replied, fascinated by how quickly she was adapting to human communication. "I'm Marcus Reed. Do you have a name I can call you?" She tilted her head, the gesture surprisingly human. In his mind, he received an impression of musical tones and shifting colors that he realized must be her true name. Then came understanding that human vocal cords couldn't reproduce it. "Vera," she said aloud, her first spoken word. Her voice had an ethereal quality, like wind through crystal. "You may call me Vera." Marcus couldn't help but smile. "It's nice to properly meet you, Vera." Her tendrils rippled with increased luminescence, and he felt her amusement at his expression. "Your facial muscles contract to express positive emotion." "Fascinating." "Yes, we call it smiling," Marcus explained. "Your species doesn't smile?" We express through light and resonance. Her tendrils demonstrated, creating complex patterns of illumination. But her next attempt at a smile, while slightly uncanny, showed how quickly she could adapt. Over the next few hours, their conversation flowed between spoken words and mental impressions. Vera learned English at an astronomical rate, though she occasionally mixed metaphors in amusing ways. She explained that her species, the Lumini, communicated primarily through bioluminescence and telepathic resonance. Physical speech was secondary, used mainly for interaction with other species. Why were you in stasis? Marcus finally asked the question that had been nagging at him. What happened to your ship? Vera's light patterns dimmed, and a wave of profound sadness washed through their mental connection. Escape, came the answer, layered with complex emotions. The last ship. The last hope. You're running from something? Hunters, she explained, both in mind and halting speech. They destroyed my world. Few survived. Scattered among stars. Her tendrils coiled tightly, their light pulsing with distress. Ship damaged in pursuit. Emergency landing protocols engaged. Found your world, similar atmospheric composition. Compatible biosphere. Marcus fought the urge to reach out and comfort her, unsure how such contact would be received. But Vera surprised him by extending one of her tendrils, letting it rest gently against his hand. The connection between their minds strengthened, and he felt the full weight of her loss, the destruction of her civilization, the desperate flight through space, the crushing loneliness of being perhaps the last of her kind in this sector of the galaxy. You're safe here, he assured her, careful to project both mental and verbal certainty. I won't let anything happen to you. Her tendril squeezed his hand gently, sending a pleasant tingle up his arm. Your protection is appreciated. But her thought carried concern for him as well. Your own species, they will want to study me. Contain me. Your career, your life, at risk for helping me. Let me worry about that, Marcus said firmly. Right now, you need to focus on healing. Vera's attempt at a smile grew more natural. You are unusual, Marcus Reed. Most beings fear difference. I'm a scientist. Difference fascinates me. But even as he said it, Marcus knew his interest in Vera had moved beyond mere scientific curiosity. The way she perceived the world, her quick intelligence, her resilience in the face of unimaginable loss, all of it drew him to her in ways he couldn't quite explain. As if reading this thought, and perhaps she had, Vera's skin shifted to display deeper, warmer hues. Your species experiences attraction through chemical processes and visual stimuli, she observed, her mental tone carrying a note of wonder. We respond to resonance patterns, energy harmonies. Her tendrils created a beautiful display of shifting lights. But I find myself appreciating human aesthetics. Marcus felt his face grow warm, knowing she could probably sense his physiological response to her words. We should run some more tests, he said quickly, trying to maintain professional distance. Make sure your healing is progressing properly. Vera's amusement rippled through their connection. Your deflection is noted, she thought, but allowed him to change the subject. Yet as Marcus went through his medical checks, he couldn't help noticing how her tendrils followed his movements, or how her skin's iridescence brightened whenever their eyes met. Outside the research station, another storm was brewing. Soon, Marcus knew, he would have to make contact with the outside world. His superiors would demand answers, and Vera's presence couldn't be hidden forever. But for now, in this isolated corner of the Arctic, two beings from vastly different worlds were discovering that some connections transcended the barriers of species and space. As night fell and the aurora borealis painted the sky, Vera watched the lights dance through the station's reinforced windows. Her own bioluminescence seemed to pulse in harmony with the celestial display. Beautiful, she said aloud, her voice growing more confident with practice. Yes, Marcus agreed, though he found himself watching the play of aurora light across her ethereal features rather than the sky. Beautiful indeed. 2 weeks had passed since Vera's awakening, and the Arctic Research Station had transformed into something entirely new. The main laboratory, once sterile and orderly, now pulsed with crystalline growths that Vera had cultivated from salvaged components of her ship. They served as both power sources and communication arrays, their soft luminescence matching the rhythm of her own bioluminescent patterns. Marcus watched in fascination as Vera manipulated the crystals, her tendrils connecting directly with their structure. The integration of organic and technological components is remarkable, he said, making notes on his tablet. Your species essentially grew your technology rather than built it. We evolved alongside it, Vera explained, her spoken English now nearly perfect, though she still communicated complex concepts through their mental link. The distinction your kind makes between organic and artificial is unnecessary. Her tendrils created a cascade of lights that reflected her amusement. Much like many of your other distinctions. Marcus set down his tablet, recognizing her tone. Over the past weeks, their conversations had grown increasingly philosophical. What distinctions do you mean? Work and pleasure. Science and emotion. Professional distance and personal connection. Her galaxy-filled eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. You struggle to maintain these boundaries, even as you question their validity. He couldn't deny it. His initial scientific objectivity had eroded with each passing day. Every new discovery about Vera's species fascinated him, but it was her personality that truly captivated him, her keen insights, her subtle humor, her profound appreciation for the beauty she found in humanity's supposed limitations. It's considered important in human scientific research to maintain emotional distance, he explained, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. To avoid bias. Vera's skin rippled with patterns that indicated skepticism. Yet your greatest scientific breakthroughs often come from researchers who form deep connections with their subjects. You're Jane Goodall. You're Dian Fossey. She had absorbed Earth's scientific history with remarkable speed. Perhaps emotion does not cloud observation, but rather, illuminates it. As if to demonstrate, she extended her tendrils, creating a three-dimensional light display between them. It showed the double helix of human DNA alongside the more complex spiral of her own genetic structure. Where they overlapped, new patterns emerged. Your DNA and mine, she explained, so different in structure, yet sharing a fundamental resonance. Like our minds. Like our hearts. The last word came with a pulse of emotional resonance that made Marcus's breath catch. I have studied your biology, your culture, your art. You seek connection in all things, even as you deny its importance. Marcus stood, moving closer to the display. And your people? Did they not have similar conflicts? Vera's lights dimmed slightly. We had our own blindnesses. We believed our technological evolution made us superior. Safer. A wave of grief colored their mental connection. We never imagined others might see our advancement as a threat. Never prepared for the possibility of extinction. Without thinking, Marcus reached out, letting his hand pass through the light display to touch one of her tendrils. The contact sent a shock of shared sensation through them both, his concern mixing with her sorrow, creating something new and profound. You're not extinct, he said softly. You're here. Adapting. Growing. Her tendril curled around his fingers, its light pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. Because of you, she replied, both aloud and in his mind. You chose understanding over fear. Connection over isolation. The crystalline growths around them shifted their illumination, responding to Vera's emotional state. Marcus had learned to read these changes, they now showed patterns he associated with vulnerability, with hope, and with something deeper he hadn't dared name. I've been thinking, Vera continued, her free tendrils creating complex designs in the air. The hunters who destroyed my world, they feared what they did not understand. But humanity, despite its divisions, possesses a remarkable capacity for acceptance. For growth. She met his eyes. Perhaps that is why I was guided here. Not just to survive, but to bridge worlds. Marcus felt the weight of her words, understanding their implications. The authorities will come eventually. I can't hide your presence forever. I know. Her skin shifted to display calming patterns. But when they come, they will find not a frightened refugee, but someone who has already begun integrating with Earth's culture. Someone who can offer knowledge, advancement. Her tendrils squeezed his hand gently. Someone who has formed a deep bond with a respected human scientist. The last words carried layers of meaning through their mental connection. Marcus saw flashes of possible futures, human and Lumini technology merging, new forms of communication evolving, barriers between species dissolving. But beneath these grand visions lay something more personal, more immediate. Vera, he started, struggling to find words for the emotions flooding their connection. These bonds you speak of, they're unprecedented. We don't know. Look, she interrupted, using her free tendrils to create another light display. This one showed two energy patterns, distinct but harmonious, slowly interweaving. Your electromagnetic field. Mine. Already changing. Adapting. Her galaxy eyes seemed to hold entire universes of possibility. We are writing new definitions of understanding. Of connection. A pause, filled with shared anticipation. Of love. The word, both spoken and felt, hung between them like a bridge across the vast distances of space and evolution. Marcus looked at their joined hands, his solid and human, her tendril ethereal and alien, and saw not difference, but complementarity. Not separation, but synthesis. The world will change when they find you, he said quietly. It already has. Vera's response came with a wave of certainty and affection. One heart at a time. Around them, the crystal matrices hummed with new frequencies, their light taking on patterns neither purely Lumini nor human, but something gloriously, impossibly new. Outside, the endless Arctic night sparkled with stars, the same stars that had guided Vera to Earth, to this place, to him. The barriers between researcher and subject, between human and alien, between past and future, dissolved in the light of understanding that filled the station. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not as separate beings, but as pioneers of a connection that defied every known boundary of science and soul. The warning came at midnight. Marcus was reviewing data from their latest series of experiments when the station's proximity alerts began blaring. On the monitors, multiple vehicles approached across the frozen landscape, heavy-duty military transports, their headlights cutting through the perpetual winter darkness. Vera. He rushed to the laboratory where she worked with her crystal matrices. She was already aware, her tendrils moving in agitated patterns that cast frantic shadows on the walls. 3 vehicles, she said, connected to the station's sensors through her crystalline technology. 12 humans. Their communications are encrypted, but their intent. Her galaxy eyes met his. They know about me. Marcus's mind raced. They had discussed this possibility, planned for it, but the reality still struck like a physical blow. How much time? 20 minutes at their current speed. Vera's skin rippled with warning patterns. They're armed. The weight of the moment pressed down on them both. Everything they'd built over the past month, their research, their connection, their dreams of peaceful first contact, balanced on a knife's edge. We have contingency plans, Marcus said, already moving to his computer. I can wipe the core data, scramble the... No. Vera's mental touch carried firm conviction. Running will only confirm their fears. Make me a threat. Her tendrils created a complex pattern that he'd learned meant determination. We must choose a different path. They might try to separate us, Marcus argued. Contain you. Study you like. Like a specimen? Her lights pulsed with gentle irony. As you once might have? He fell silent, remembering their first encounter, how close he'd come to calling in his discovery immediately. How different things might have been. Your people must learn of mine eventually, Vera continued. Better it be here, on our terms, with you as intermediary. Her tendrils reached for him, their familiar touch sending warmth through their connection. Trust what we've built. The approaching vehicles drew closer. Marcus could now see they bore no official markings, a Black Ops team, then. Probably monitoring the station's power signatures, picking up the unique energy patterns of Vera's crystals. Dr. Reed. A voice boomed through the station's external speakers. This is Colonel Richard Walsh. We know about your visitor. We're coming in to secure the facility. Marcus felt Vera's consciousness brush his, sharing impressions of the Colonel, a complex mix of duty, curiosity, and genuine concern for Earth's security. Not a cruel man, but one bound by protocol and paranoia. If we run, Vera said softly, we'll always be running. Your people will never stop hunting us, never trust that I mean no harm. Her skin shifted to display calming patterns. But if we stay, if we show them, they'll take you away, Marcus protested, his voice rough with emotion. Their fear. Fear exists only in absence of understanding. She moved closer, her tendrils creating a light show that matched the aurora outside. You taught me that, Marcus. By choosing to help me that first day, by seeing past your own fears, you showed me humanity's potential. The vehicles had stopped outside. Men in tactical gear were deploying, surrounding the station. Final warning, Dr. Reed, Walsh's voice came again. Open the doors, or we'll breach them. Marcus looked at Vera, this extraordinary being who had crashed into his world and transformed it completely. In her eyes, he saw not fear, but certainty. Not resignation, but hope. Your world needs this, she said. The knowledge I carry, the possibilities we've discovered together, they could advance your species by centuries. But only if we face this moment with courage. Through their mental link, she shared visions of potential futures, human cities illuminated by living crystal technology, new forms of communication bridging minds and hearts, the stars themselves coming within reach through the merger of their sciences. Dr. Reed. Walsh was at the door now. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Marcus took a deep breath, then reached for the station's intercom. Colonel Walsh. Before you breach anything, I have a proposal. We're listening. The colonel's tone was guarded but not hostile. Give me 1 hour. Let me show you what we've discovered. Not as a threat, but as the greatest opportunity humanity has ever encountered. He felt Vera's approval flowing through their connection. 1 hour to demonstrate why cooperation will benefit Earth far more than confrontation. A long pause followed. Marcus and Vera stood together, their joined hands creating patterns of light that danced across the laboratory walls. Finally, Walsh's voice returned. You have 30 minutes, Doctor. Then we come in, one way or another. Vera's tendrils curved in what Marcus now recognized as a smile. 30 minutes to change the world, she said. Shall we begin? Together, they prepared the laboratory, arranging their research data, their successful experiments, the profound discoveries they'd made about the compatibility of their two species. But more than that, they prepared to show these armed men something they'd never expected to find: truth, beauty, and the possibility of connection across the vast gulf of space. Whatever happens, Marcus said softly, I want you to know. I know. Vera's response came in both words and waves of emotion through their link. I have always known. The station's main door opened with a hiss of hydraulics. Boots sounded on metal floors, weapons at ready. But in the laboratory, Marcus and Vera stood tall, their joined forms casting a single shadow in the crystal light. They had made their choice. Now it was humanity's turn to make theirs. 6 months after the night of first contact, the Arctic Research Station had become the center of a new era in human history. What was once a remote outpost now housed a joint human-Lumini research facility, its original structures surrounded by crystalline towers that gleamed with internal light. The military presence remained, but the armed guards had been gradually replaced by scientists, diplomats, and researchers from around the world. Marcus stood at the window of his new office, watching the aurora dance across the expanded compound. Behind him, holographic displays showed the progress of various projects, medical breakthroughs using Lumini regeneration technology, clean energy systems based on crystal matrices, and the early stages of faster-than-light communication arrays. Lost in thought again? Vera's mental touch came with her familiar warmth as she entered the room. Her appearance had changed subtly over the months, her tendrils now incorporated thin strands of crystalline technology, allowing her to interface more directly with human systems. Her skin patterns had developed new complexities that better conveyed emotion to human observers. Remembering, Marcus replied, turning to face her. Sometimes it's hard to believe how much has changed since that first night in the storm. Vera moved to join him at the window, her tendrils creating patterns that mimicked the aurora above. The Council of Nations meets tomorrow to vote on the proposed Lumini Integration Act. Her galaxy eyes reflected both stars and crystal light. Many of your people still fear change. But more of them embrace it. Marcus gestured to the facility around them. Look at what we've accomplished in just 6 months. Clean energy initiatives, medical advancements, new forms of communication. And love, Vera added, her skin shifting to display the deep, warm patterns he'd come to associate with their most intimate moments. The most unexpected discovery of all. Their relationship had become something of a symbol, controversial to some, inspiring to others. They had appeared before governments, scientific bodies, and the media, demonstrating that true connection transcended physical form. Their mental link had strengthened to the point where they could share not just thoughts and emotions, but entire worldviews, experiencing life through each other's perceptions. Colonel Walsh asked me an interesting question today, Marcus said, remembering his meeting with the man who had once stormed the facility but now served as their chief of security. He wanted to know if I ever regretted my choice that first night. If I ever wished I'd followed protocol instead of helping you. Vera's tendrils curled in curiosity. And what did you tell him? I told him that some choices aren't really choices at all. He reached for her hand, feeling the familiar tingle of their connection strengthening. When you find something that transforms your understanding of the universe itself, protocol becomes meaningless. Through their link, they shared memories of the past months, the tense first meetings with government officials, the breakthrough moment when Vera's healing technology saved a dying child, the gradual shift in public opinion as humanity began to grasp the possibilities of cooperation with the Lumini. The hunters will come eventually, Vera said, voicing the concern that always lurked at the edges of their happiness. My people's enemies will find us here. And they'll find something they never expected. Marcus's conviction flowed through their connection. Not just a surviving Lumini, but an entire planet of allies. Your technology combined with human determination. Your wisdom merged with our drive to protect what we love. Outside, a new crystal tower rose slowly from the frozen ground, its growth guided by a team of human and Lumini scientists working in perfect synchronization. It would serve as a deep space monitoring station, the first of many designed to watch for approaching threats, or other refugees seeking sanctuary. Tomorrow's vote will change everything, Vera mused. Official recognition of Lumini citizenship. The right to live, work, and... She paused, her skin flickering with nervous patterns. And marry. Marcus felt his heart skip. Through their link came a surge of emotion, hope, love, and a very human kind of anxiety. Vera, are you? Her tendrils created a complex series of light patterns that took him a moment to recognize: human wedding rings, DNA helixes intertwining, stars exploding into new galaxies. "My studies of human culture suggest it is customary for the male to propose," she said, her mental tone mixing formality with amusement. "But my people believe in meeting destiny halfway." Marcus laughed, joy bubbling up through their connection. "Trust you to find a way to bridge that cultural gap too. Is that a yes?" Her galaxy eyes sparkled with both light and tears, another human trait she'd adopted. Instead of answering aloud, Marcus opened his mind fully to their connection, letting her feel the depth of his love, his commitment, his absolute certainty that their future lay together. Vera's response came in waves of light and emotion that filled the room with impossible colors. They stood together at the window, watching their shared creation grow beneath the Arctic stars. The facility's crystals pulsed with a new rhythm, responding to their joy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new horizons to explore. But they would face them as they had faced everything since that first night in the storm, together, proving that love truly could bridge the gap between stars. In the distance, another aurora began to dance across the sky. But now its lights were joined by the glow of crystal towers, creating a display that symbolized what humanity and Lumini could achieve together. It was more than a fairy tale, more than a first contact story. It was proof that in all the vast, dark spaces between stars, love could light the way to something entirely new. "New horizons," Vera whispered, both in voice and mind. "New horizons," Marcus agreed, holding her close as their joint light show rivaled the aurora above. And in that moment, surrounded by the fruits of their impossible love, they were no longer human and alien, scientist and subject, rescuer and refugee. They were simply two beings who had found in each other the greatest discovery of all, a love that could reshape worlds and light the way to the stars themselves.